there's a really important question, I think, that a lot of activists are asking themselves, and that's why don't we just get rid of the GRC and the GRA? Just repeal all of that.
Yeah,
wouldn't that help?
Shall I take that?
Go for it.
So about 9,000 gender recognition certificates have ever been given out, as far as we know, and there's probably about 6,000 people who have them. You may notice it's not 6,000 people who are claiming that they have the right to use spaces for the opposite sex, and that it is not the fact that, you know, despite what Akua said about how there is no right to self-ID, what's happened is that, in fact, self-ID is the de facto law of the land. Some people call it Stonewall law. So if we got rid of the Gender Recognition Act tomorrow, I don't think anything would change. The Gender Recognition Act was an extremely important part of what got us here, but flicking that switch wouldn't get us back, because it was a stepping stone, and the law and the practice has now gone way, way, way beyond the law in most places. So in one way, it's way under ambitious. Like getting rid of the Gender Recognition Act would do almost nothing. But in another way, it's over ambitious, which is that if you look at how it came to be, it's in response to a case that went all the way to the European Court of Human Rights. So that was the case of Christine Goodwin, who was a bloke in his 50s, who was a bus driver, who went and he wanted to do paperworky type things like, you know, getting a loan or something like that. But he had to, you know, this is an analog times. This is the early 2000s. You had to show your birth cert as part of your ID. And in his mind, this outed him as a man. We've seen video of Christine Goodwin. It did not out him as a man. But listen, you know, people have the right to their own thoughts about themselves. We all of us have some fond delusions about ourselves, I'm sure. He didn't want to have to show that he was male. And then this, in the fullness of time, made it the whole way to the European Court of Human Rights, where, by the way, the plaintiff doesn't appear. Like, plaintiffs appear in the first case, and then after that it's paperwork. So the people weren't actually looking at Christine and thinking, I don't really feel that your privacy is majorly at risk here. And they decided that there was a privacy right that for these people who had gone through, and they went into this very purple prose about, you know, how much they had suffered and what they had gone through and extreme cases, and society needs to make accommodations for them, etc., etc. These people had to be given a way to get a birth cert that falsified their sex. And then, of course, the UK government went and gold-plated it and said you didn't have to have surgery and so on. Undoing a law that was in response to a European Court of Human Rights judgment, if you have a way to do it, please feel free, because we don't know how to do that, and it would take 20 years, and it will be everything, all our time and effort, and it might not still work. And anyway, like I said, those 9,000 pieces of paper are not the problem. So we feel that at the same time, it's too ambitious and not ambitious enough. And the thing is that if you fix the Equality Act, then you start the process whereby you start to say, as Maya said, what is this? What are we trying to do here? Why are we telling men that they can't come into this space? Well, because girls are getting naked in this space, so we can't have men in there. It's a shower. Piece of paper is irrelevant to that. Every man in the country could be given a GRC saying that he's a woman, and we still wouldn't want them in here. So that's why we are focusing our efforts where they are. Very happy for people to say repeal the GRA. I've got no brief for the GRA. It's just why we're not, that's not where we're putting the effort of our less than 10 people in our small but perfectly formed team.
And we think by putting the focus on the Equality Act, it's putting the focus on women's rights, it's putting on the focus on the everyday law that people are applying all the time, because the world is full of men and women. Rather than, if you focus on repealing the GRA, it's all about taking away trans people's rights. So what we're asking, effectively what we're asking is for section 9.1 of the GRA, which is the bit that says for all legal purposes, to be repealed in relation to the Equality Act. And the Equality Act is the great big law that affects all our lives in so many ways. So that feels, and that allows us to have a conversation with politicians and with the public that's about single-sex services, women's refuges, showers, toilets, searching, the practical implications, rather than if you start having a conversation about the GRA, the first thing is people go, what? And you have to explain the whole thing to them, rather than say, do you think, you know, as Helen Stanaland says, women and girls should be able to have a shower in peace without men male people coming in.
And we can keep saying it's about our rights. Like, you know, the very annoying thing that's happened during this election campaign where, you know, somebody phones in and says to one of the politicians, you know, why do you not care about women's rights? And they start talking about trans. Why are we talking about trans? We need to be talking about women and men, and in particular women.
Yeah. Brilliant. So just one last question on matters of law. We've had, just as we were sat in the wings, I was thinking that 3 years ago, I was not even embroiled in a legal battle yet.
You were short. Yours was a really short one. She was 4 years.
Yeah, yeah. I was short, relatively. I am short.
Compared to Ben Cooper, you're talking about
Yeah,
now.
well, but anybody, you know, compared to everybody. I identify as very, very tall.